All right, that looks like it's live. Kia ora, g'day, welcome back. Looks like everything's live. Sunday, we are here Sunday afternoon, morning. Where are we? Sunday, come on, phone. 12 o'clock. So Sunday afternoon, and back with another live. There's a few questions that have come through. Well, not so much questions, a few comments, and then blinking where the fella says, I've put a few questions down. He's put bloody almost a dozen. Anyway, I'm going to work through these and then try and answer them as best I can where I might need to answer them. First one, I don't know that I need to answer it other than say thank you. It's got, hi Joe, I enjoy your channel, mate. I have a suggestion regarding your live reactions that may help minimize you getting copyright notices. Please note, I'm not a social media guru and I don't know if it will work, LOL. But the thought came to mind, so I figured I'd share it. With you. When you finish doing your live reaction to a video, make that video private or unlisted, or just for members only after you've finished your live reaction, or just do live reaction videos for members only, so that way it's not open to the public. That might help in stopping your videos from being blocked. Just a suggestion, mate. Go well. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Yeah, didn't think of that. So obviously, so we'll I'll have a look at that. Maybe it's maybe I'll just do the lives like you said for as per normal, and then I suppose change the setting later. See if that makes a difference on the live reaction videos. I've actually got a live reaction lined up. Where is it? Oh, where did it go? It's on the Gurkhas, actually. The life-changing journey of being selected as a Gurkha, Forces TV. So going to do a reaction to that. Maybe I'll get to it today. How long is it? It's about 21 minutes or 21:57 it's got there. So maybe I'll trial it out on that. So thank you for that suggestion. Next one. This one came through on Instagram. This person sent the message and says, just thinking, what else would I be doing at 0500 hours on a Sunday? Have you considered doing live reactions? Question mark. Might help to keep the conversation. So sort of in line with the first comment that come through. Might help to keep the conversation on track. And you can comment on sections of videos and answer groups of questions at the same time, rather than getting sidetracked for half an hour on each individual question. LOL, they've got there. This might be an interesting one to experiment with. 16 minutes about SASR and Timor. Have a great Sunday. Try not to drown, mate. Cheers, bro. Thanks for that. I saw the, I think I saw the title or the thumbnail. It's got how SASR destroyed US trained elite forces. Yeah, I haven't seen that one before, so I'll have a look at it. And thanks for stopping and dropping that message into the DM section. So cheers for that, bro. Actually, let's have a look, see if there's anybody on here now. That was one of the other things that somebody that I just spoke with. They said, why don't you just have the chat open while you're doing your videos? Please consider reacting to Matthew Cole, journalist who reported crimes by ST6. Many ST6 members whistle blew to him. Yeah, I've got that. I will have a look at that. I think you've got it on there's two podcasts that you've sent through. One where he's with Andy Stump. Is it Stump or Stump? And then the other one with those other two guys, two American lads. I forget their name, but yeah. Please consider reacting to Eric Deming, Navy SEAL whistleblower. Has a good Team House, that's the one. Team House interview in other places. Yeah, that's right. I think I remember your comment from the live on Friday, this Friday just gone. Says Jocko got SEALs killed, was corrupt. He reported Jocko and got him kicked out. Wow. I'll snap, you don't usually read comments this early. Yeah, I was just saying, one of the suggestions that I got from people that I was talking with, they said, oh, with your lives, maybe just have the chat open. So I can see that I can have the chat open now. It's probably likely always been there, but I haven't usually clicked on it until after I've gone through reading out what what has been sent through. So anyway, I'll give it a try, see how I go. So that was the one with that's been sent through. So I'll have a look at that. Live reactions, and then making them private or unlisted, or making them just for members only. Once they're done, um, the suggestion also was in there, maybe make them just for members only, the live reactions as it is. Yeah, that may be an option, but we'll see how we go first, of just doing them regular and then switching them to members only, or private. Well, no, I think if I make them private or unlisted, then nobody can see them. But at least if I make them members only, then at least members, those that are members, can still see them. Anyway, this next one. Oh, hang on. No, you're busy, but it's great you're willing to do reactions on your channel. Yeah, 100%. Like, well, I think, thank you for that comment, Solly. And I think the fact that people like yourself and others have been kind enough to request or spend any time here for those reactions, yeah, I enjoy it. So I'll keep doing them. It's just, yeah, things get a bit busy at times and can't get through as much as what I'd like to get through. So anyway, uh, the third one here, which is the last most recent message that I've received with the blinking bazillion questions that have come up. Not really, there's 11, but anyway, he says here, hey Joe, would you consider doing videos whereby you talk about some of your life experience in handling or working through slash with different situations and people? That's the first part. Hopefully I'll remember when I come back to it. Carries on. I've been following your channel for a while now, from back when you were posting those burpee videos every day and your old podcast you were doing. I was stoked to see you pop back up on social media. Thanks for that. I've watched and listened to a bunch of your content, although I don't usually make any comments and have never made any suggestions until now. Thanks again. I've heard you speak briefly in other videos about some of your work experience. I work as a corrections officer here in New Zealand, roughly 7 years now. So I'm particularly interested in hearing about some of your experience or frustrations or challenges, haha, in the reintegration space working with former prisoners. Oh, okay. Wow. Um, yeah, all right. Respect to you, bro. 7 years corrections officer. That's a hard place to be working. Frontline corrections officer. Not that I've done that job, but I know a number of people, and having worked for corrections, but more at head office and traveling in and out of some of the prisons, and then getting into the reintegration space, I have you know, a like a tiny fraction of an idea of how challenging that work is. So yeah, thanks for that. Okay, that's what you're interested in. All right, the reintegration space is interesting to me, and something I'm considering moving forward. But I'm looking at it more from the youth side of things. A lot of our adult males in the prison system get caught up in trouble at a young age. So my thinking is around trying to help break those cycles before those bad habits become too entrenched into their daily lives. Wow, that's awesome, bro. You'd have a heck of a lot of experience and um, knowledge to be able to pass on to a lot of the youth and young people to try to help steer them and guide them in a better direction or better path than what they may be on. That's cool, man. You've got here, side note, some of my colleagues recognize you from some presentations you gave about your reintegration service you were running there in Wellington. Okay. You don't say what they said about me, so uh, other than they recognize me. I've popped a few questions below and would be interested to hear your thoughts. But if you don't want to, that's okay as well. Thanks for taking the time to think about it anyway. All the best with your channel, bro, and thanks for your service. Well, thanks for taking the time to reach out and for these blanking bazillion questions that you've got down here. The first part, one of the things that you mentioned, would I consider doing videos whereby I talk about some of my life experience? Yeah, well, I think I've done some of that, maybe not in as much detail as like some of the questions you've got down here, bro. But the some of the stuff that's on my mind that I know I still need to catch up on is that, in no particular order, series that I was doing. I think the video that I need to do is the next one is around um, the East Timor deployment, and then preparing for SASR selection. So I think there might be the third or the fourth video in that space. I've only done two, I think, two or three. Well, I've done two or three, so either the next video is three or four, and yeah, it's been ages since I blinking got onto that. I have received some other messages from people wanting to, wondering when that next video is going to pop up. So I haven't forgotten about them. I have got a list of things that I'm working through, and I will get to them. It's just taking a little bit longer than what I would have liked. So that's that one. Yeah, that's a cool point. I mean, talking about some of the life experience and handling, working through social with different situations and people. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that until reading some of your questions that you got down here. And some of your questions are hearty, bro. I'm going to read through those. I don't know about probably, I'd say there's no way I'm going to get through all of these questions in this video, just because, just because of the thoughts and consideration, I would say, that you've put into the questions. So thanks for that. Um, but anyway, let's see. What else did you say? You follow the channel for a while. Yeah, thanks for that. Bunch of content. Don't usually make comments or suggestions. You've heard me speak about some of my previous work. You're a corrections officer here in NZ, 7 years now. Reintegration space. So you're particularly interested in working with younger people, the youth, trying to break that cycle before those bad habits become too entrenched into their daily lives. Man, that's pretty cool, man. Reading that, and that's where your headspace is. 7 years is a long time, bro, to be working in that space in the corrections field. I don't know which prison you're working at, but because you haven't mentioned here, but that's a long time, and no doubt you've seen a lot of stuff. Um, Colleagues, yeah, popped a few questions by. All right, cool. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to read through the questions that you've got here, and then I'm going to go back and then just start from this top and then try and answer one, let alone the 11 that you've got here. What have we got? Where are we? Would you do reactions interviews with other veterans, e.g., Hugh Care, UK vet? Different people can give different insights. Yeah, 100%. Solly, yeah, lots of people have asked me if I would do interviews. I've spoken about that in terms of I'd love to do interviews in person, um, rather than the way I did them on the Epic podcast before, and would just do them, well, not just, but the vast majority were online. Um, I, those were good, but I just think there's something about doing them in person. And so when I've seen Hugh Keir do his interviews, like, yeah, I think it's just there's something better. I think anyway about doing them in person. Sean Ryan does his in person. Hugh Keir does them in person, from what I've seen. Who else is there? Well, the big popular ones do theirs in person. I'm not saying you need to be big and popular to do it. I just think personally, having done them online remotely, it would be better to do them in person. Actually, I know I'm getting sidetracked now, and that this is probably in line with the second bloody comment that came through on IG. It might help me from getting sidetracked for half an hour. Well, I'll probably get sidetracked for an hour. But anyway, let me get this out. I was doing an interview with Des Powell, former 2-2 SAS guy, awesome guy, author of the book Bravo 30. And we just had major difficulties. I had really good internet connection where I was in Auckland. He had good internet connection. It it wasn't working. I was using Riverside, which is what I'm using now. Uh, it had worked well with so many other guests or people that I was interviewing, and it just didn't work. And then Des and I just haven't reconnected. But he's an awesome dude. Him and I worked together in the private security space. And so when I saw that he had a book out, and I know what a good speaker he is and how he can tell a story, and just the way he tells it and expresses himself as well. I was like, oh, I've got to interview this guy. Anyway, the wheels fell off that one. We kept getting frozen. Um, and yeah, and then it just didn't work. So I jumped on the phone and said, hey, sorry, bro, it's bloody not working. We'll try and reconnect later, but we never did. So that was easily a couple of years, more than a couple of years ago now. So I haven't forgotten about Des either, but that sort of stuff, I think personally, solely I'd prefer to do in person. So yeah, I didn't be a while before I'm having the opportunity to interview somebody like Hugh or anything like that, at least in person anyway. Hugh is the same. Only time he did online was COVID. Yeah, okay. I could imagine that. Yeah, COVID would have bloody hamstrung a lot of stuff. See what you mean in person, better connection. Yeah, I just think it's much nicer. Um, Yeah, but obviously logistically and financially, that's a bit of an issue to try to travel and go there and set that up, and also timings and schedules and stuff. But I definitely think it's worth it. So thanks for that. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to read through these 11 questions that the bro has sent through here, the corrections officer, and then I'll try and answer some without going for 5 hours this time. Questions. First one: how do you build a culture of trust, discipline, and respect in an environment where you have people from different gangs living in the same space, but without the restrictions of a prison? That's one of the questions. I told you there were some hearty questions. What is the very first boundary? Second question: what is the very first boundary you establish when taking over a potentially chaotic or high risk environment like a reintegration service? Three, when someone has a history of committing the same crimes slash offenses, how do you get them to buy into personal accountability? Four, how do you distinguish between someone who genuinely wants help and someone who is just playing the system? That's a great question. Well, they're all four of these so far great questions. But that one put a big smile on my face because it brought back a lot of memories in terms of my time working in that space anyway. Five, what did working at the Wellington Reintegration Whare or house service teach you about the necessity of routine and the effects of institutionalization on long laggers coming out of prison? Far out. Bro, these are almost like just one video in and of themselves, just your first five questions. Six, how do you structure a day for someone who has never had to answer to a schedule in their life? Far out. Seven, how do you maintain your own mental boundaries when your daily job involves carrying other people's trauma? What a cool question, man. All of these awesome questions. Really, like I said at the start, even though I was jokingly saying a bazillion questions, there's only 11, but these just, to me anyway, seem really thoughtful. And obviously, to me, it shows it lines up with where your head is at, and how you mentioned it's something that you're seriously considering moving into or moving forward in that reintegration space, but particularly with the youth, as you mentioned. So, wow, man, these are cool questions. Eight, when a process or structure fails in a rehabilitation setting, how do you run the review fairly to try and find answers? All right, I've got lots of stuff running through my head right now as I read these questions and that one. Resurfaces, juggles a whole bunch of memories that come back on some of that particular stuff. Nine, how do you teach ownership to someone who has spent their entire life blaming their circumstances on others? Wow. It, obviously, you're a corrections officer, bro. You corrections officer or case manager or both. These questions, you don't have these sorts of questions unless you've spent some time in this space. Um, wow. 10, how do you handle the frustration of watching someone you've invested in slide back into old destructive habits? Are out. Yeah, you definitely work in this space. How do you hold the line? And number 11, how do you hold the line when someone has an incident or breaks the rules, e.g., drinking alcohol or breaching curfew when they're not allowed, doing drugs or violence and aggression between residents or attacks on staff or members of the public? Sheesh. Bro, you've got some powerful questions there. And like I mentioned earlier, as I was reading through those, each one of those questions, I reckon I could just do a video and yap on for ages about each one of those. And maybe there's stuff there where people, whether they've got experience working with inmates or not, or in the reintegration service, or working with youth, might have their own um, thoughts and opinions as well, or their own experiences. I will do my best, bro, is all I can say, to um, run through these questions. I'm more than likely am not going to run through all of them in here. If anything, realistically, you probably just, like I said, these are probably just their own videos in and of themselves. But I'll try and answer. I'll just start from the top and work down and go through the first one anyway, and do my best while I'm having a look at the chat. Um, Dan, hey bro, hi guys, I'm over on Twitch. Great to see you there. Oh wow, cheers, Dan. Yeah, excuse me, got had the suggestion made, and then the same person who was kind enough to make the suggestion then also said, "Oh, maybe not because you don't play video games, so maybe that's not the space." But then I had a look and saw that there's other people on there that don't just play video games. So anyway, thought I'd trial it, and on Kick as well. That's a Australian platform. But anyway, first question: how do you build a culture of trust, discipline, and respect in an environment where you have people from different gangs living in the same space, but without the restrictions of a prison? So, for those that might just be joining for context without reading through all of it again, this is a question that I've received from a person that's currently working as a corrections officer in one of the prisons here in New Zealand for the last 7 years, or roughly 7 years. They're interested in the reintegration space, particularly with youth. They've followed my channel for a bit. They've heard me talk about some of my time. I'm pretty sure I did a video too on some of the things I learned working in that reintegration space, and I haven't gone back to that to flesh that out anymore. Anyway, this person has decided to send through 11 questions um, on their list after sharing some comments and thoughts earlier in the email that they sent through, and that's the first question. So, how do you build a culture of trust, discipline, and respect in an environment where you have people from different gangs? And it's not just gangs too that I'd say. So there are a number of people in the reintegration space, at least in my experience, that don't have any affiliation or direct affiliation to a gang. So they're not a patched member, they're not a prospect or whatever. They're completely unaffiliated, but they've made some um, choices or decisions, poor as they may be, which have resulted in them having to go to prison and spend time, whether for a short time or a long period of time. So they've got here different gangs living in the same space, but without the restrictions of a prison. So, bloody hell, flying by the seat of my pants right here and just trying to cast my mind back. But how do I build that? The things that we did. So what I would start off by saying first is acknowledging that the whare that I went into, Te Whare Whakaruru Hau o Manuka, is the name of the service that I was privileged to be employed in by the Runanga, which is a joint venture partnership between Ngāti Toa Rangatira and Te Atiawa and Arapautama Aotearoa, or Department of Corrections. So those three, the two iwi plus Department of Corrections, banded together long before I got there, said, let's create this thing with a Te Ao Māori worldview and lens, because the vast majority of prisoners, at least here in New Zealand, are predominantly Māori or Pacific Islander, mostly Māori, from what I've seen anyway in the stats and all that sort of stuff. And lots of common threads which link those individuals from that heritage, ethnicity, background, whatever you want to call it, um, that have resulted in, sadly, a lot of my people, Māori people, going into prison, and some of them for very, very long periods of time. So that stuff, that service is where I was going, was already established. They already had some really cool people, experienced people with some people with some lived experience that were already managing, running, and serving in that space. I never knew, there was a number of them that I never met, never had the opportunity to meet, but I met at least a couple of them who were still there. The service manager, the guy that was the first service manager for that space as well, was there. Really awesome guy, lovely guy. I got to meet him. Didn't realize that we went to the same school in Gizzy in high school. I think I was a year or two older than him, but yeah, he went on to do awesome things with his career, and then I think he served as a police officer, maybe as a detective as well, and then he went on and did some other stuff, and he was the service manager there. So that place, from what I could see, already had some good foundations. It's not like I came in and built this thing. So I just want to try to clarify that and acknowledge those that were there. Then by the time I got there, that service manager, the guy that was the first service manager, had moved on, and there was a senior case manager from corrections who worked at one of the prisons, um, and Wayne was his name, and he. So the first service manager, his first name was Anaru. awesome guy. And then the senior case manager, who was seconded to be the service manager for this particular whare in Nainai, Wayne, he was filling in as in the service manager role. And it was pretty chaotic, and a lot of hard work and a lot of late nights and a lot of hours being done. And during that time, Wayne reached out to me, and I had an opportunity while I was still working full time for corrections in my substantive role there. And he said, "Hey, would you be interested in having a look at this? You know, potentially coming on as a service manager?" Because what I didn't realize at that time was that the actual service manager who was on leave was strongly considering not going back for whatever their reasons were or whatever his reasons were, and that ended up happening. So I ended up not going back. So anyway, I went along, met with both Anaru and Wayne, awesome guys, like I mentioned. Then I went out to the whare, met with some of the men that were there, and part of the routine and structure that they had for the morning, and just getting a bit of a feel for what that space was like. Um, so why do I share that? To your question, building a culture of trust, discipline, respect, and environment. People from different gangs. So I saw people from different that had different gang affiliations, and some that didn't. And I saw, I guess, the bones or the foundation of what was already in place there. And to me, it seemed like this is, it's not too bad. It's looked and sounded pretty good. I'll be honest. So that's the first part. So I wasn't going in having to your question, I wasn't going in having to try to establish this this culture, this trust, this discipline, this respect from scratch. There was already a base there. Uh, so that's the first part. Anyway, um, I like to think that we added to that though. When I say we, I mean those of the team, and then my role as the service manager there, which was challenging. And so you've got some other questions and stuff further down the track, so I'll try not to skip ahead. But what did we do? So I suppose I can try and tap into some of the stuff that we did whilst I was there. And so all up, just for context as well. So I ended up working there for a little over a year in that role, as a service manager for Te Whare Whakauru Haurau Manuka, uh, a male reintegration service. So no females in the space, just males. It was a pilot program, from what I understand, in terms of testing this type of residential setting out. And yeah, it was funded, and governance committees and all that sort of stuff, and reports and all that sort of thing that were required. So what we did, was, when I got there, I felt like I needed to get a really good understanding of what the process was to bring new, members, new residents, new uh, people into the whare, into the service, and get an understanding of what that process looked like. Because, like one of your questions, was it someone or people gaming the system or something like that, is what you had, in one of your questions. I won't worry about trying to find it right now. But I needed to understand what that looked like, how long that took, what sort of steps were being taken to identify the right type of men that were genuine about trying to make some change in their life for the better or in a positive sense before we bring them in. We didn't want to have it just so it was like a free for all and people look to use our service as a means to present themselves as well as they can to a parole board so that they get a tick in the box and then get released and come to us, and then they just bloody behave like rat bags and go and carry on doing all the stupid stuff that they were doing before they went into prison in the first place or the second place or the 10th place. So anyway, so that was a first part, and all of that ties into trying to build this trust, discipline, and respect. To your question, we had a look at that, saw that there were some gaps in how that process was working, and went back and had a look at some of the challenges and issues of what resulted, because the process to review and assess and then decide on bringing individuals into the whare, looking at how and why those uh, challenges, failings happened. What I mean by failings is, guys getting released to the whare, to the service, and then reoffending, doing the same sort of stupid stuff that they were doing that got them in there in the first place, keeping the same sort of associations when they weren't supposed to, and yeah, and then not being surprised when I read, the reviews and the reports that they've ended up reoffending and then getting recalled in some cases, and or just stuffing up that badly that they just got arrested again and then going back into prison. So having an understanding of that, like I said, is what helped me and us identify that there were some gaps in how that assessment and eventual onboarding process was taking place. So we did a quite a significant overhaul of that. I felt like that's what needed to take place, and I had awesome support from my general manager at the time. So my general manager was Thomas Perenara, better known as being TJ Perenara's father. Yes, TJ, the former All Black, former Hurricane. I've never had the privilege of meeting TJ, but I have had the privilege of working under and being supervised by uh, Thomas Senior, I guess, TJ's dad, and he was an awesome boss. Like anybody that knows him, like just he'll probably never see this video, but Thomas was a good man, and I felt very privileged to have him as my general manager, giving me some guidance and correction from time to time, and direction with regards to what he felt I should be doing and how I could go about doing things. But he also, at the same time, gave me a lot of freedom, a massive amount of freedom to do what I felt was going to be in the best interest of the service, of the men, of the iwi, and for corrections as part of that partnership. So, massive shout out and respect to Thomas for his support and trust in me to go and work there anyway. That being said, yeah, we identified those gaps. We looked at some of the challenges that were happening and then pulled the trigger on making the changes to those. So, particularly trust, discipline, and respect. How do we build that culture? Well, the onboarding and assessment process looked like it wasn't strong enough. There wasn't enough accountability. It wasn't in depth enough, and there wasn't enough. I wasn't seeing enough in terms of what is the actual person who is saying they want to come to our service. What are they actually doing to show us that they're trying to change? So the prisons are offering, and still to this day, as far as I'm aware, offer a number of courses and programs that people can do to try to help better themselves. I'm not talking about just literacy and or numeracy and literacy type stuff. Talking about violence and aggression programs, rehabilitation, drug and alcohol programs, communication, relationships, yeah, and standard education, things like that. So they have a, a number of treatment programs in place whereby inmates can apply from what was happening, at least when I was working in the reintegration space, and or could be recommended by their case managers and that sort of stuff to try to help them get onto those programs so that they can, try and make some progress towards what it was doing. So that was the first part. When we would get a list of referrals of people, having a look at, you know, sort of there was some documentation that they had to fill out. I won't go into all the details in there, but that there's a lot of information that needed to be filled out. Case managers would support them and help them in doing that. That would come to me. I'd do the first screening and read through all of that stuff, go back and forth with the case manager and find out any other bits and pieces of information. I would have access to a lot of, you know, sensitive information on the individual. Um, and then making sure that I kept that um, tightly controlled as I could with regards to who had eyes on that sort of stuff. So, I'd get their whole criminal history. It'd get where requested in a lot of cases, psychological evaluations and reports, case manager reports, um, specific court notes, well, from sentencing, and in regards to, I forget the actual name for the document again. It's been a while, but having a play by play in terms of the transcript of what was said and discussed, and um, quite graphic details of things that these crimes that these men had committed. So anyway, a lot of information to read through, but I felt like that was necessary because I needed to get an idea of who the person was, as best I could on paper, um, and then have a look at what they've been doing. So, have they been doing any programs or courses? If so, what have they done? Were they an active participant or were they just a bum on a seat? So, I would drill down heavily into and speak with the case managers who would then put me in touch with the program or course facilitators, who would then be able to give me an actual report of, oh yeah, Joe just he attended but he didn't participate or engage. So that told me a bit about the individual. If they showed up for however many weeks or months that program went for, never engaged, never participated, they went there to tick the box to show on paper that they attended a STIRP program or a particular program within the system, just so that it would be looked at favorably when presented to a parole board. Well, for me, that wasn't enough. So I'd dig deeper, have a conversation, get some written communication from those that are running, and then that would help me help build a better picture for me in terms of that person. Once I, get access to that sort of stuff and have a look at it, I'd then be organising to have the first meeting. Like if on paper it looks like they seem to be legitimate in what they're doing, and that they haven't just been a bum on a seat, and this is the sort of stuff that they've been actively participating in, and they haven't been involved in any misconducts or incidents in prison for a minimum period of 3 months before their application came through to me, then I would take that as a sign that they appear to at least be trying to make some changes and stay out of trouble. So then they'd get an opportunity to have a meeting. That meeting could go anywhere from an hour to 2 or 3 hours, because I had a lot of questions for them. A lot of times, those questions, just because of the work that was coming through and the amount of reading that needed to happen, although the prison was like just down the road, I was in Lower Hutt, and the prison was, maybe 15, 20 minutes away, not too far. It was still a trip. It would still be like 20 minutes there and back, or one way, I should say. So you lose about 40 minutes to an hour, sometimes a bit longer, depending on traffic and time of day. Then you lose time going through the security protocols and screening processes on the way in. Not too bad on the way up, but there's a process, and you're stuck at a gate or a door waiting for that to be buzzed and unlocked before you can go through. Then closes, you go to the next one, you got to wait there, and there's people moving around, etc., etc. So that can chew a lot of time. Um, so rather than doing those, a lot of the initial meetings were done online, uh, like through Zoom, that sort of stuff, or through Teams. And so they'd be brought into a room, and then I'd be able to just have some time with them, one to one. It was always better doing them in person, I felt, but we made use of what we could because we had a large list of people looking to try to or expressing an interest to want to come to our service. And when you've got limited beds, I think we had 22 or 23 beds available within the homes, and you've got a list of, sometimes getting on the referral list anywhere from 30 to 50 to plus of applicants. Well, then you've got to try as well as you can to filter through all of that information, and then filter out the seemingly on paper, the ones that don't appear to be doing much, because I've gotten the reports from case managers, from program leaders or facilitators, and on paper, and the fact that they've um, haven't bothered to really fill out the documentation that we sent. That to us, and that to me, was also another indication of how genuine they are to wanting to come to the service. If they're just writing 2, 3 word answers, excuse me, or one simple line where the question obviously requires more information, then to me, that sort of gave an indication, in conjunction with the reports and case manager information. Those things work together to help me have a better picture of, okay, I don't know that this person's genuine about what they're wanting to do yet. Um, Tell them they can reapply in a few months once they've done this. So that would be the other thing, needing to make sure, not just shutting them off and rejecting them or declining the application of individuals that, by all accounts and from what appears on paper and from what I've seen and heard from those that have spoken with about them, and or my interaction with them, if they got that far for the first one, taking all of that into consideration, but then giving them some feedback so that, hey, don't know that you're not really showing us at this stage that you're genuine about wanting to come here and make the changes that we expect, that we require, and that you're stating because of these things. But if you still are interested in wanting to come here, uh, you can reapply in X amount of weeks, months, typically months. And if you can show us, or we need you to be able to show us these things, and then just list those things out, and then send that back to them so that they can either read it, digest it, and go, oh, okay, these people aren't just a tick in the box service. They actually want us to do stuff. And from that, we got better results. People either went away, worked on the stuff that we had suggested, and more. In some cases, they'd done more, or they just went, "Yeah, no buggies. I'll just apply to this other service down the road." Um, they seem to be taking anybody, and sure enough, a number of those people got released, and they got released to those other services. And that's all well and good. That's not a criticism of other reintegration services or other services trying to help people that have been in and out of the prison, but it was something that I observed whereby. Um, I would use the term standards weren't the same. So they weren't consistent across the board, across reintegration services. It seems that different reintegration services can have different expectations, standards, requirements, and if some aren't the same as others, well then, yeah, like at the end of the day, if you're presented with an option to be released from prison, and one service, let's say the service that I had the privilege to work at and manage, is got this higher expectation of what they want to see from individuals before we'll consider them to come there, before they go through the in-depth process of assessment, before we then assign them a navigator or a kaiarataki, a navigator, somebody that works specifically with them once they progress, before we present them to an iwi panel, which has members of the community, or had a member of the who represents the community, I should say, co-mātuas from both iwi, representation from corrections and that as well as the assistant service manager and myself, um, and the navigator that's been working with them before they get to that stage. Like there's quite a number of hoops, people might say, to jump through. But if a person's genuine, those obstacles, barriers, those hoops flowed pretty smoothly, from how they ran with us, especially when you've got people that can actually show the progress that they've been making, and the case managers are verifying that, as well as program facilitators are confirming as well. It just made things flow a lot smoother, and a lot easier. But when you don't have that sort of process, when it's just a case of you have one 10-15 minute meeting, maybe 30-minute meeting maximum with some other places, a person is going to tell you, my experience, a person is going to tell you what they think it is that you want to hear, so that they can get released from prison. Like that's the truth. um, I've witnessed it, we've experienced it, and we've learned from it, and so and that will continue to happen. Uh, so it's about trying to have we identified as about trying to have a robust system in place that was going to help us minimize that from happening, so that we got better results, better outcomes for those. So yeah, we might not have had a full service, might not have been able to get 22, 23 people into the service. Even though we had 50 plus applications, that's because there was a number of things that took place. And so, sometimes people would have an incident or get done for a misconduct. Well, our expectation was that as you progress, now that you're progressing and in the pipeline, if you have a misconduct, or you get charged with an incident, or you have a violence and aggression incident against another inmate or against a correction staff officer or whatever, you have contraband done and you get written up, then you're back to the bottom of the list. Like, you don't get to stay where you are. You are removed. And we sadly had people that made it all the way to an iwi panel, whereby that was basically the final step, whereby it's a collective decision. It's not just me saying, yep, oh, Jono is good to come here. Um, I play a part in terms of where individuals progress on to the next person, but then it's another set of eyes and ears that are looking at them, who then also then we get together and have a chat, make a decision, progress them on. Then the navigator works with them for several sessions, 6 sessions, roughly lasting an hour each one, sometimes longer if need be. Then they come back. So now, by now, there's been 3 sets of eyes, and there's been probably anywhere from 10 plus hours worth of, or at least minimum 8 plus hours spent with this one individual as part of their assessment, and then go into an iwi panel. So we've had members get all the way to an iwi panel. Then we got the sad notification from the case manager that so and so has had an incident, has been charged, has done a stupid thing. Um, and even the case manager is still asked, could they still be considered for the iwi panel? They got done with contraband, or they tested positive for drugs in their system. And as sad as it is, like, and as hard as that was, and one of those frustrating things, which is one of your questions as well, like, there's been a lot of time, effort, energy, work spent on that one individual. All the paperwork that I mentioned that comes in, all the reports, like, they're literally, for me anyway, not being the fastest reader, there's hours, sometimes days worth of reading and assessment, going through, making my notes before jumping on and having the meeting. Now, I'd try to spend as much time as I could to get through those as quick as I could, so that they're not waiting too long, so that I could then have the meeting. So hence why a lot of late nights and a lot of time spent on that. But it was worth it. To me, it was worth it, because then I got to identify and filter through on paper. Yep, strong candidates, not so strong, load of rubbish. And go, yeah, that person is, they're definitely not getting a look in unless they do these things. And so it was pretty easy to contact the case managers of those and give a list of things of what we're not seeing. And please don't send us applications like this again. So that was one of the things that we needed to identify. So building trust, discipline, and respect. That meant also building relationships with the case managers, with the prison supervisors, or general managers, I think they're called now. So lots of working parts to it. But coming back to that, where people fall over at that, essentially for us, what was the final hurdle, the iwi panel, and then getting that notification in the meeting, hey, just letting you know, unfortunately, either during the meeting or just before we're about to have the meeting. So meetings scheduled and booked, people have blocked time out of their day to be present for this iwi panel to assess these several applicants, who by that stage, it's a pretty good chance, unless we can't explain something very well, it's a pretty good chance that those that we've submitted for the iwi panel are going to be accepted to come into the whare. And so it's a pretty positive thing, uh, unless members of the panel ask us questions that we just can't answer. So it's almost like myself, the kairataki, the assistant service manager. It's like it's our turn to get grilled, for want of a better term, and get some questions around what, specifically, what due diligence have we done? How do we know this? What are we going to do if, based on their offending? What happens if this happens? How are we going to deal with that? What have we got in place to mitigate that? We can see here that they're wanting to do this in terms of their career progression, or career progression in terms of education, so that they can go into a career. We can see that they've got this, or that they don't have this, i.e., their family doesn't want to have anything to do with them because of the offence or the offending that they've committed, and that's been like that for such a long period of time. Or we can see there's this, what's it called? Bloody when they want to try to make amends. I forget the bloody technical term for it, if it is a technical term, where people want to go and basically apologize, make amends, to the victims or people that they've caused the offence or grievances and stuff to. How we're going to facilitate that? The person doesn't want to have anything to do with them, blah blah blah. So we were basically would get grilled. I wouldn't say grilled, but we'd get questioned anyway. Make sure that we've done our homework and due diligence, so that we're setting the person up for success. Ultimately, that was the aim of that iwi panel, us getting grilled and questioned to make sure that we've identified everything that we can, that they've got a safety plan for the individual prepared, that we've got things in place, instruction in place to help them achieve those things. Again, trying to set them up for success, and how are we going to go about doing that, and some of the what ifs, based on their offending history and based on some of the things that they've identified and disclosed to us around how and why they think, or what sent them down the rabbit hole or the offending path that they went down. So, how can we identify that early if we need to? what do we have in place? What will we put in place to support them through that so that they don't go back into those dark places and do the silly things that they were doing? So, man, yeah, there's your question is a big one, eh? So you ask these, like from my take, you ask these hearty questions. So I'm trying to give as good an answer as I can, or as detailed an answer as I can, specific to how do you build a culture of trust, discipline, and respect in the environment. People from different gangs, same space, but without the restrictions of a prison. So that's an important part. Uh, Without the restrictions of a prison, they're living in homes basically in their own room. Their doors aren't locked at night. Like they have the keys to come and go out of their home whenever they like. So they don't have those restrictions. Yes, there are some rules, some tikanga and kawa that they need to abide by. Um, Whilst they're there, and there's quite a decent list of those that were provided. But again, all of that stuff from our side, we felt was important to disclose to these people that expressed an interest to want to come to the whare in the first place so that they knew what they were walking into. So for us, that's part of building that culture of trust, that discipline, and that respect. Before they even get to us, during those assessments, like assessment with me, assessment with the assistant service manager, assessment with the navigator, discussions with the individual and their case manager, the relationships with the prison general managers, people that needed to know and were interested in what it was that we did and how we went about doing things and why they should be supportive of what it was that we do, because we felt that our standards were very high and we made some changes to that to be recognized or to be known for having high standards for individuals, regardless of their offending history. You could be what do they call it, a short lagger or a long lagger. Your crime may not have been as serious or as major as somebody that's been on a life sentence for murder and or those that have done manslaughter or massive drug uses and just frequent assault Lincoln charges against anyone and everyone, and a lot particularly against females. To us, it didn't matter. The standard was the same. Some of those conversations may have been a bit more in depth because I expected to see and hear what it was that individuals had been doing, uh, but the standard was still the same and the expectations were still the same. And so we felt for us, by those that we were meeting with who expressed an interest to come to us, them knowing what they were going to be stepping into before they even got there, there was no, oh, you didn't tell us that that was part of the process here. You didn't say that we weren't allowed to drink alcohol at all whilst we were here. You didn't tell us that there'd be random drug and alcohol testing, and that we have to participate. You didn't tell us that there were going to be house inspections, before we got here. Like all of that stuff was disclosed to these individuals before they got to us. The expectations around what was acceptable and not acceptable, and the knowledge of what the consequences would be if they breached any of those. So, which was basically they were going to be kicked out. That may result in a recall, particularly if they were, had their probation officer and that sort of stuff. But we were as honest and as transparent with them as we could, so that there was no backtracking or them trying to game the system and go, "You never told me any of that." Like, we went through it. Every meeting was documented. The information that was shared with them, they read, they agreed, they signed to. We explained it. We even um, one of the last one of the last assessments or interviews before they get recommended for the iwi panel was back with myself and the assistant service manager, and the navigator is there as well. So the navigator's gone through all this work, which includes drilling into them the understanding and the expectation of what they would be walking into. So there was absolutely no way that they could go, "Oh, I didn't know that." And then the last assessment, we come in there, and then we have that opportunity to have that Q&A with them, to assess them and what they know, to ask them those questions. What happens if? What is our position on, etc., etc. And we'd run through all of those things, all the tikanga and kawa, the rules, the expectations that we had for the whare. And if they couldn't answer those questions, if they couldn't answer all of them, and if they didn't understand them, then they weren't progressed to the iwi panel. They were told that, and then they go, "Okay, hey, listen, Not sure that you fully grasp what it is of what our expectations are at this stage. What we're going to do is you won't be getting recommended for the iwi panel right now. Navigator's here. Navigator's going to work with you. So we didn't disregard them. They just needed to spend some more time. So the process was really the expectation and the standard in the process was a lot more rigorous than what it had been in the past. So again, as I mentioned, the foundations and stuff were already there, but I wasn't there from the start. That was just me having a short little visit and having a meeting and a kai with the boys, hearing about some of the great work that they were doing, being interested in it, and then once I was on the ground and then seen, for me, I was like, this isn't enough. There's not enough. Um, there's not enough process or assessment in place to my liking for us to have a better chance of setting our service up for success. Because being a pilot program at that time, like we're under the microscope as well. Like if this doesn't deliver the results that it's saying it can deliver in the time frame with which it was expected to deliver outcomes in, well then why would you carry on running or funding a service like that? So there's that aspect of it. But for me, that wasn't really the most important part. I went on to that knowing that my job wasn't guaranteed, knowing that there was no guarantee. Like, if we don't meet the outcomes in X amount of time, this contract may be done. And so, therefore, none of us have a job. But I loved that part of the challenge of it. And yeah, and I felt like we could do some good. So that's why we leaned into that. So, building that trust, discipline, and respect for me and for us, it came down to that transparency, the assessment with regards to looking at the work. So that transparency needed to work two ways, and the assessment process needed to work two ways. So it wasn't all one way traffic. By us being honest and upfront with applicants at the start, we made it real clear to them that the assessment works both ways. Like, as much as I and we are assessing you for suitability to come to our whare and be a part of our whānau or this service, and help you move in a more positive direction and then become independent and confident and all that sort of stuff. Equally, you're assessing us, or the applicant was assessing us as to whether or not we are what they want, and or whether or not we are what they are looking for to help them move in the direction that they want to move in. Hopefully that makes sense. And we did have some people that declined us. So as much as we may have been declining a number of people, there were some people that I met with and that we met with who, after getting through the first couple of stages and working with one of the navigators, then, out of the blue, out of nowhere, but we do know why in the end, once we found out, they said, oh, yeah, nah, listen, I'm not interested in coming to you guys anymore. They didn't really explain anything more other than, which we sort of put two and two together, other than they had applied to another service and the other service had accepted them straight away. They had a parole board hearing coming up, and all they really needed to show was that they had a place that they could go, excuse me, and that was willing to take them on. Because ours still had probably several more weeks to go before they would get to that stage, and the parole board was coming up well within the time whereby our assessment would be finished, and they'd already been accepted by this other service, which was before when their parole board was going to happen. Um, yeah, they took that offer instead. Uh, don't get me wrong, I don't know how set up or how robust that assessment process was, because I haven't gone through it, but I knew enough to know from other case managers and from other inmates that had been to that service to know that it wasn't very much, that it was nothing like the expectation, the process, or the standards that we had, in regards to considering anybody to come to the service that I was fortunate to work at for that period of time. So, yeah, like if you're getting offered an opportunity to get out of prison sooner rather than later, um, and you really want to get out, it makes sense to me, you're probably going to choose the option that allows you to get out of prison sooner. Although we have always felt that we were much better set up to actually help that individual, if they wanted that help, to get ahead, to make change and be better, etc. So yeah, assessment process, building the relationships not only with the inmate or the applicant, the case manager, the GM, etc. Being honest with them about the expectations and the requirements. Still having rules in place, like some of those are uh, imposed by corrections themselves. So probation, having, we would call it their Rolexes, if they've got their Rolex on their ankle that they need to wear, and they've got their curfews and places where they can't go, or areas whereby they're restricted in terms of their movement that they can't go into. Obviously, they've got to abide by those. If they don't, things, it could result in a recall for them to go back to prison or whatever. So all of that stuff, there's a heck of a lot of stuff that we would just run through, cross the T's, dot the I's, specific to those individuals. So, somebody, depending on what their criminal history record shows, and if there's a lot of common threads and themes, then we drilled hard into that stuff with them. Um, we needed to make it clear that that stuff was unacceptable, and that if they breached any of those things, that the only option at that time was you're going to be exited. So, and for us, an exit didn't mean an automatic recall. It meant some communication, obviously, to the individual, to the correction, or to the probations officer, to all our staff, to the iwi, etc. When sadly things like that did happen. So if people came, got to the whare, were doing really well, and then had a slip up, they knew right from the start before they got there, depending on the severity of that slip up, that they would be exited, and the exit was immediate. So you got a chance to get your stuff out of the house, then you're exited. As ruthless and as bad as that might sound to some people, for us, we needed to be clear and follow through with that. So that was my job to follow through with that and issue the exit. And they got their stuff and then moved out, moved to wherever it was that they moved to. We would try to identify and find out where they were going, so that we could pass that information on. But also, we didn't need to do that. It was up to them. It was their requirement. They needed to notify probation in terms of where they were going to be going, um, should they leave the whare. Because, like I said, it wasn't always an automatic recall. Oftentimes, it wasn't a recall at all. Um, Probation just needed to know, and because they were now not living at a place whereby they had been released to on their parole board, and they would then need to get approval from the board, etc., for that person to go live at a new place. But before that could happen, probation, corrections would need to go and visit that place and do an assessment of it for suitability. So there's a whole other bunch of work that would then need to happen for corrections, probation, but that was for them to do. So yeah, that having that those standards in place and having that transparency in place and the dialogue, the communication that we had with those that were looking to come to us, helped us establish that culture and that environment. So really long answer, I know, but there's lots in there. Like, your question is a great question. All your questions, like I said, look to be really great questions, and hence why uh, I'm just not going to be able to go through all of those in one video. So I'll probably just space those out over time. For context, I might just briefly go over your email that you've sent and then the questions, or just choose the next question. But awesome question. Is it perfect? Was it perfect? Nothing's perfect, but it was yielding some really good results there at the whare. And it was a great place, like very rewarding, some challenging, hard work there to do, but we'll get to that as I go through these other 10 questions of yours that you've got. Um, but in addition to that, and if not most important, was the staff that were there. So there was just a lot of stuff happening at the time. We had to recruit for a whole bunch of new staff because we were understaffed. I think there was one, two, three, four, me, five, six. There might have been six, and a couple of those were just like casual staff. Maybe six or seven, and that wasn't on site at any one time. Like, we were running skeleton crew for a while, and so when you've got not all the staff, same anywhere, eh? Like, you know, overworked and underpaid, people would talk about. It was very similar there. We didn't have the staffing but we made do as best we could. The runanga was awesome. So Ngāti Toa, we grabbed staff from the youth space. So they got a youth space where they look after and help support youth as well. So some of those support workers would come over to the whare and help fill in on the night shifts and that sort of stuff, because we ran, it was 24/7, always staffed, with staff there at the whare. And we just didn't have the numbers to, even with me sleeping and staying at the whare a few times each week, we still didn't have the staff to be able to cover all the shifts that were there. So shout out to the youth support workers as well at the runanga that would come over and help support our space until we got the staffing. So you've got all these applicants, then I'm involved in the recruitment as well with the other staff, or yeah, with key staff. Like we didn't have all the staff to be able to delegate. You look after all the recruitment. Plus, I felt it was important, if we were going to be bringing new staff in, that whoever's the service manager for that space is known to potential new members coming in. So yeah, a lot of hours and time spent there, but it's awesome. It's still running really well. From time to time, I've intentionally kept my distance from the whare, because not because I don't want to be around them, but because it was in a good space when I left it anyway, and I feel really, really happy about that. Not just because of me, but because of all the team that was there, and stuff happened whereby I needed to step back from that, um, which meant I couldn't do what I needed to do at home uh, with the family and run that place as well as what I felt like I was able to do at that time. Well, I couldn't give it um, the time, effort, and energy that I needed to at that time. But it was in a much better space whereby I was happy that I could step back and somebody else could move into it in the service manager role, and not be starting from not having to rebuild anything or change much or anything of the process. So because it was pretty well established by then, and we started getting some really good runs on the board. So yeah, all of that stuff combined with the staffing, the recruitment happening. I guess you could say two lines of recruitment for staff and recruitment for the whare, in terms of applicants or men that were expressing a strong interest, some not so strong, but an interest in wanting to come to the whare and make those changes. So yeah, it was a bit of a hectic time, uh, but an awesome time too. So yeah, I think hopefully that helps answer that. Oh, maybe the one part I've left out here: people with different gangs. So for us, it didn't matter which gang you're from. They knew, like, those were part of the rules. Like, if you're going to come here, you can't have any more affiliation with your gang. Like, if you want to come here, you have to be willing to cut ties. For a number of those people, that was just not on the cards. They're like, yeah, nah. And so they would tell us that two-way assessment. And again, the honesty and transparency. Most of those guys, when we told them that, they actually said, "Oh, hey, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I've been through the dirt and mud and everything with my bros in the gang, and I understand that." And they're like, "There's no way I'm cutting ties with them." Respected and appreciated their honesty, thanked them for it, acknowledged them, said, "Hey, really appreciate you being honest and upfront with us. We are always mindful of those that have got and that have been in the gangs for a long period of time. We are mindful and are aware, conscious of what we're asking you to do. And the fact that you've been honest with us really means a lot. But yeah, we're just not the service for you. If you can't break those ties, but you're telling us that you want to break the cycle and you want to do better, but you're telling us that you're going to stay connected with them, we can't have you here at the whare." And so, yeah, they were pretty cool to us too, for the most part. Yeah, there were some people that dropped the F bombs and told me and us to F off and whatever. It is what it is. But for the most part, a lot of those uh, deeply rooted, strong Thai gang connections or individuals, yeah, they just thanked us as well. They said, "Oh, bro, bloody thanks for letting me know that at the start, because I probably would have got pissed off if I got to your place and then you're telling me that I can't associate with my gang mates." So yeah, for us, we knew that being upfront with them, so that people would know what they were walking into before they got to us, um, would be a critical piece of, building trust, and in an environment whereby, there's mutual respect and there's a level of discipline expected and required and consistency throughout. So yeah, the different gangs like Killer Bees, Mongrel Mob, Black Power, Headhunters, Nomads, King Cobras, like that, King Cobras or whatever it's called, like all sorts. And then you had people not affiliated, had skinheads as well, and people that were connected with skins. So yeah, a very diverse range of people, but people that if they've gone through that, when they had gone through that process with us, and that had been staying out of trouble whilst inside, and then coming to us, and then doing the things that they said that they would do, and the things that were expected based on the structure and the routine, and the rules and of what we had at the whare, then there was typically no dramas. Like there was laughter. It was like an extended family. That's how I felt about it anyway. But you're still being cautious. You're still being situationally aware. You're still being mindful of how you present each day, how you communicate and talk with the men and with the staff, what you're saying to and or about other people, and respecting the boundaries. I think that's one of your questions anyway for number 7. It's got boundary. Oh no, that's in regards to mental boundaries. But there are physical boundaries that needed to be respected from both sides, from us as staff supporting these men, and from the men who have voluntarily applied to come to us and have agreed to all of our rules and expectations and standards, who have told us that they want our support and help. So, yeah, I think that's all of that. Trust, discipline, respect, environment, culture, people from different gangs, same space, and without the restrictions of a prison. So, yeah, like we didn't put all the same gang members in the same house. Everybody was mixed, and that was intentional because it was part of their commitment to get on well with, regardless of who it was that they were with. And I think by and large, part of that was the fact that in prison they basically were mixed with with individuals, men from other gangs anyway. So that wasn't such a big deal unless they, really had a disliking towards each other. Then maybe that resulted in some stuff in prison. But we never had that happen, thankfully, during my time anyway. Excuse me. We never had that happen at the whare, whereby uh, different gang members getting upset with each other and then having a scrap or whatever. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see play out actually. But again, that's because all of that process and legwork was done at the start. Um, the restrictions, without the restrictions in prison, as I mentioned, they could come and go. They had keys to their own home. Obviously, they had curfews imposed by probation. We also had a whare curfew as well, again, which was for their safety, and so that um, they can, get a few runs on the board, and then we would start, because the whole point is for them to just go back to normal, right? No curfew, no Rolex on their ankle, um, being able to participate and engage in alcohol again if that's something that they want to do, their choice, but just for the period of time and how the process went, like that's a no-no for the foreseeable future, should they make it there. And we want to see some results in terms of what they're doing. Are they doing the things that they said that they would do based on their safety plan, based on their progression and what they're wanting to do, from education or work or family connection or reconciliation with regards to, you know, people that they may have caused harm to, etc. And if those people have been open to that. Um, yeah, there's a lot of things that we expected to see, which they knew they needed to show before, a loosening of, not shackles, I don't want to use that term, before a relaxing of um, requirements for individuals staying at the whare. And again, that's a whole nother challenge when you've got newcomers into the whare who then see people that have been at the whare for a while, or at the service for a while, who have earned their stripes, who've been doing all the things that they're supposed to do. And as an example, their curfew is extended by a couple of hours. and the new person coming in is going, "Oh, hang on, I thought the curfew was this time. Like, how come he and or how come they are allowed to be out later? Like, that's not fair." So, that that opened our eyes up to, oh, actually, we need to include that in the assessment as well, and just talk about that. People progress at different stages and at different times. So understanding, acknowledging, and respecting that if you see somebody, curfew as an example, doesn't need to be back by 8 o'clock or 8 p.m., but you still do, that's because they've put in a lot of work and shown us and earned that opportunity. And it's been approved by us and it's been approved by probation. So, don't go getting your undies in a twist if you come here and you're still at the beginning stages of your journey here at the whare. So a lot of those things, there was lots of learning and continuous improvement that we looked to implement along the way. But as I mentioned, yeah, I'm pretty sure a lot of that stuff is still the same now, just based on the limited interaction that I have from time to time with people that are still there and people that I was fortunate enough to be a part of the recruitment process when they signed up and wanted to come and work at the whare. So it's great to know that they're going well. Like I said, I keep a really good distance. Like I don't reach out to the whare. I might speak to the service manager from time to time just to check in with him because he was my assistant service manager to IC essentially, and he's just an awesome fella. And so it's nice to just check in on him from time to time because I know that work uh, can be some heavy work. It's not without its challenges, but that's for another time. And amongst these other 10 questions that you've felt to send through, bro. So thank you. Hope everything goes well with your continued work in the correction space. Like I said, that's not a easy space to be working in, and you've been there for 7 years, so you know better than myself or anybody the challenges that come in that space. Your questions are super um, thoughtful. They bring up a lot of memories for me. Just reading the questions that you've provided, and wishing you nothing but the best, not only in your current role, but whenever you decide potentially heading down, as you've mentioned, that reintegration space. But where is it? But but looking more at the from the youth side of things, there's something about trying to break that cycle early, and whereby you could potentially yield a lot better, a lot more positive results. So respect to you for having that thought in mind, and wishing you nothing but the best of that in that space. So yeah, that's that question, man. That's a heavy one, or not a heavy one. It's a cool one. What's this? Loading GGGE. Hey mate, I'm currently on my way to a community barbecue in support of BRS in Brisbane. Oh, that's awesome, man. Wicked. Hopefully, or I don't know if RS is going to be there, but I've seen a few photos pop up on Instagram whereby people getting photos with them. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. So hopefully, with any luck, you might get to see him if you're heading off to that barbecue to support RS. Bob Mack. Hey, bud. Kia ora, bro. And I think, yeah, I stayed up to date. Well, there's only a handful of comments and stuff on there. So appreciate you fellas' time. Looks like there's a handful of people that have been on here on this live. Uh, I will look to. Oh no, I don't need to make this private um, because it's not a reaction. I have got a reaction video which I will probably do after this and get into. And you know what? That video that I mentioned that I'd be doing the reaction to on the Gurkhas, the life-changing journey of being selected as a Gurkha Forces TV. I might just stop this video first and then jump in on that. I'm looking forward to it. Like Gurkhas have got a great reputation. Um, they're pretty good cooks too, from some of the food that I've been fortunate to taste and have from them. Just real basic food, but bloody it tasted good anyway. And just very, to me, very humble people. So yeah, but you know, you wouldn't want to mess with them out on the battlefield. You're glad you're on their side, is what I would say. So yeah, I'll do a reaction to that, and it'll be the reaction videos that I do live, where I'll then look to try to make them, I guess, switch them to private or members only, to hopefully, based on what old mate has said here. So hopefully, I or minimizes or it stops getting copyright notices. Was it Dave? Tēnā koe, bro. Hope you're well, man. Yeah, hope everything's going well, Mr. New Zealand Blades and Bullets, Dave. And hope Charlie's going well too, and the family, bro. So yeah, cheers for stopping by, bros. All right, I'll leave this one here. I- I'm not going to go through these other 10 questions in regards to the reintegration space, but maybe I'll just do those as separate videos. Thank you. I won't mention the person's name that has sent through this, the corrections officer serving 7 years right now. But thanks for the questions. Um, yeah, and your time and the work that you do too. So anyway, everybody else, have a great weekend. If you happen to pop back in when I jump onto this live that I'm going to do for these Gurkhas video that I've got that's been sent through, then I might see you there. If not, I'll be talking to myself. So anyway, stay awesome, take care, and yeah, like whatever challenges. I know I haven't shared this for a little bit, but whatever challenges, difficulties, hardships you or people that you might know might be going through, hopefully you're able to just keep working through them, to keep turning up, keep staying in the fight, to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and just take one day at a time. Hopefully you're able to support or encourage those that you might know that are just struggling, got some heavy stuff going on at the moment, and able to guide them in such a way that they can, just keep pushing. I know it's I know it sucks. I know it's easier said than done. Like things can be super miserable at times and can be at the point where it's just you feel like, what's the point? I think we've all been there, but man, like I've always said, well, I feel like I've always said, my experience has been that things can do and will get better if you want them to. So as long as you and I and we want things to get better, and we're willing to just sort of, you know, plod through that misery as well as we can, even though we know that we might look bloody useless or we might feel useless and look useless and just things might just weigh that heavy on us that we just feel like, what's the point? Man, just keep going. Like it's not a throwaway line to me. It might, again, I know it sounds easier said than done, but it's not a, I don't say it to just be disrespectful or to just ignore the challenges that people may be going through. I say it because it's true. Like just keep going. Just turn up and just go again and again and again. One of the guys, I think Steve Lance, on the Go Always a Little Further, the live that I did on Friday, where I bloody yapped on for 5 hours and did a whole bunch of other stuff in there. He spoke about words to the effect of what it means to him. And just in essence, what I took away from it was that no matter how miserable and hard things get, that you can always give more. So going always a little further, I just thought, man, I think I replied to him and said, love it. Like, that's awesome. So you and I and we can always give more. It's not over unless we decide and say that it's over. So hopefully we don't choose that, and hopefully we choose instead to just keep fighting. So anyway, as always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there is a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all. I'll try to look at the chat in the comments when I do the live. I don't know if I'll be able to capture all of that while seeing the video that I'll share when I do the live and the reaction, but I'll try anyway. If I'm not able to, oh well. Anyway, stay awesome. Have a good weekend, and I'll be jumping onto a live soon-ish. What's the time? Yeah, soonish. Stop.